Hello, and welcome to Survivor to Thriver, the summit on healing beyond abuse to regain control of your life. This is your straight up resource for actionable advice and mindset pivots that are going to bring you that much closer to living out your thriving a life that is just filled with so much love, joy, confidence, and prosperity. I'm your host, Heather Dunlop, and today we have with us Lianne Torres to talk about turning your pain into power and not allowing the negativity we experience in life to hold us back. So here's just a little bit more about Lianne. Lianne is a personal development coach and host of the podcast Watch Us Thrive, a personal development podcast to reconnect you with your inner magic, where she talks about the importance of mental health and trauma healing, how to escape the clutches of toxic relationships, and how to discover your inner magic. She shines a light on taboo topics that many may not want us to discuss. So here's Lianne. Welcome, Lianne.
Hi, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, I'm so happy to have you with us, Lianne. And I'm excited to have this conversation because I know you go on your podcast and you talk about the things that so many people just do not want us to talk about. That's why we had those secrets, right? I
Yes.
knew I had them. So it's time to shine a light on them. So before we get going, share a little bit more about your background and how you came to do the work that you're doing today.
This all started from a very dark place in my life. It started from me physically escaping from an abusive relationship. It was the height of the pandemic, and I found myself to be in a very emotionally, verbally, physically violent relationship. It took for me to almost lose my life in order for me to really have this sort of rebirth and really get to know Lianne on a personal level, because I had the tendency to really attract toxic people in my life when it came to my romantic relationships. And I feel like I survived what I went through for a reason.
Mm-hmm.
And that's why I started my podcast, Watch Us Thrive. I really felt very alone when I was in that relationship because no one around me knew what was happening. What I portrayed to the world was like this picture perfect, oh my God, I found the one. But really, behind closed doors, I was suffering in silence. So, my whole vision for my brand, my podcast, what I stand for is to, like you said in the introduction, really highlight these taboo, uncomfortable conversations like domestic violence, like any sort of trauma that we go through, and really paint the picture that you don't need to suffer in silence and you don't need to allow what has happened to you, as painful as it may have been, to control your destiny. So that's a little bit about what I'm doing.
And it's amazing. I absolutely love that this was born out of that. There's always the saying, rise from the ashes. And the one thing that you mentioned too, which I find interesting, which was a concern that I had when the pandemic hit, how many relationships are going to escalate because now we don't have a place to go, right? The kids didn't have school to go to, which may have been a safe place. And everybody's in the home now with these heightened feelings and emotions. Money got tight for a lot of people. There was the fear mongering all about the pandemic because it was so unknown when it started. I had the concern, like, what's going to happen to so many people? And I don't even think we've seen the ramifications of that yet. There was so much damage during the pandemic that I don't think we've really seen what's come out of it yet.
Yeah, absolutely. And, there were so many reports going around of how much domestic violence increased during the pandemic because, like you said, you're stuck at home with this person who's abusing you. You have nowhere to go. You can't call anyone because life is just happening around us. It's so scary to think how many people are really suffering through this. I was very naive to this whole domestic violence world because I never found myself in it. I didn't know anyone who was in it until after I got out of my relationship and I started doing a lot of research. It's wild to me how many people are going through this, but we don't talk about it because it's so uncomfortable. Like I said before, I didn't tell anyone what was happening until the night that he almost killed me. That's when people found out what was going on.
Yeah, and it's amazing the secrets that we keep.
Yeah.
Because I think there's such a stigma in society, and it's not just here in the US, it's around the world. Like many of the women coming on to speak and share at the summit are from around the world as well. And our participants are from around the world. So it's not something that happens in one area. And like when you say the statistics here in the US, it's 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 4 women, depending on which figures you look at. Worldwide, it's definitely 1 out of 3. And to think that, we're treated like we have to feel alone, like we don't have resources. And that's why I love that you share through your podcast and you speak out and put it out there on a platform for women to come find a way to connect with others.
Absolutely. Yeah. That has been so beneficial in my own healing. When I started talking about it, when I decided to speak up and use my voice that was lost in that relationship, that's when the healing really started. And that's when I realized, holy shit, I'm not alone. Mm-hmm. But when you're in this predicament, you feel like you're the only one going through it, right? Yeah. So it blew my mind, especially like strangers online that I haven't met halfway across the world. They're reaching out to me and saying, oh my God, me too. And that's the whole purpose as to why I do what I do and why I love what you're doing as well, that you're shining a light on something that so many of us, like you said, 1 in 3 women. Yeah. And that's only the cases that are reported. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, we don't know how many people who have succumbed to the abuse, unfortunately, because that's something that happens a lot, or just haven't had the strength or the resources to even speak up and ask for help.
Like for me, I was a child when it went on for 4 years of my childhood. So I grew up with, you have to keep the secret. You can't speak up. You can't say anything. So I became extremely quiet because I took everything internal. And people around me in my teens were like, can we get you to talk at all? Because if they knew me when I was a little kid, it was like, out having fun and everything. And people knew me through my teens and into my 20s. They see me today and they're like, you're a completely different person. And I'm like, yeah, because I found the root, and I think that's kind of what you're talking about. You found who you were before the abuse happened.
Yes. I'm still finding her. I want to paint this picture, right? Like, it sounds great. It's rainbows and butterflies now, but
it's not.
It's not, okay? It's a never-ending journey.
Yes. That's why we call it a journey, right? It's a healing journey. It's not a healing destination.
Absolutely.
Because every time we get to a certain point, we discover more because we've learned some tools and we've got more support now. Then we get through it and we're able to heal and move through that process in a different way that doesn't feel like it's going to last forever.
100%.
Yeah. So you mentioned that you believe you survived what you went through for a reason. So please share with us how you came to find the reason behind the experience.
So I want to tell this right now to everyone who's watching or listening. It wasn't in that moment that I found like, oh God, this is my purpose, right? No, I was legit broken. I was lost. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was living in Florida. I lost my apartment. My car died, lost my job, had to move back home with my family. Literally, I lost everything, right? In this moment of me not knowing whether to turn right or left or what the hell I'm going to do, I decided enough was enough. My life needs to change. I need to do something different. So what did that look like for me? First, it was speaking up and asking for help. That's the first thing. I knew that I went through something very traumatic like this, that I could not heal from it on my own. Like, it was too big of a beast for me to try to tackle by myself. So I started going to therapy. I went to individual therapy. I went to group therapy. I worked with life coaches. I've actually had 4 life coaches in the past 2.5 years since everything happened. And I've really just been working on figuring out who Lianne is at her core, because all of this started prior to this relationship, right? This was like the straw that broke the camel's back, that finally I decided to wake the fuck up and be like, okay, something needs to change, right? But this is just year after year after year of running away from this feeling of not wanting to be alone, from this feeling of having no confidence or love for myself, no trust, no self-worth, no value within me, and figuring out why. Where is this coming from? And I had to figure that out on my own. And, I still am, but I feel like I really had to do something different in order for me to start getting a different result. Because that's the definition of insanity, right? Doing the same,
doing it over and over,
expecting a different result. That was literally my entire life. I just turned 35 last week. So for the first 32 years of my life, 33 years of my my life, I was like on this hamster wheel over and over and over. And it just got to the point that I feel like God really had to shake me to my core to be like, if you don't change, something terrible is going to happen. And that's really what started my whole journey. I talk about accountability a lot on my podcast. It's not to say that I deserved what happened. Absolutely not. That's all on him and what he chose to do to me. But there was a certain point of like, why do I feel like this type of behavior is okay? Why is it that I continue to stay with this person after he's consistently over and over disrespected me in a horrible way? And I feel like this is good enough. You know, so that's the part that I really had to take responsibility over. And that's probably one of the hardest things. But mixed in all that is how I found my purpose. I hope that answered the question. I don't know if I did.
Yeah, and I love that you share that the reality is we don't find it when we're in it.
No.
We find it afterwards when we're able to reflect a little bit.
Right.
And, you know, when something like this happens to us, we start to ask more questions. And that's where you're talking about the accountability. Like, why did I think this was okay? Why did I think this was enough? Why? You know, and it's not to say there's blame, because there's no blame. We're not blaming ourselves or anything. We're just opening it up and saying, let's uncover that, because that's what needs to be healed so that we can stop it sooner in the future if it does happen, or become a different person so that we have this Teflon effect.
Yes.
People like that kind of fall off. They don't stick to us.
Exactly.
Because they know they're not going to be able to get away with things that they used to be able to get away with us.
Oh my God, you're speaking my language right now. That's literally like the journey that I'm on. And, you know, you just picture it like you're peeling back layers of an onion, right? So it's like really getting to the core that a lot of us people, you know, in the spirituality world, they like to call it like the shadows, the shadow part of us. You got to go to the uncomfortable feeling that we tend to suppress and not want to bring to the light. But it's when you ask those uncomfortable questions, like you said, and really dig deep to see why, where is this coming from? And a lot of the times it comes from childhood. Right? It comes from things that we've gone through in childhood or adolescence. You know, all these different factors play a role, but it's going to the uncomfortable places that we don't want to, where you can really start the healing process.
Yeah. There's a certain comfort level, right?
Yeah.
So when you're in the abuse, people might say to us, people who haven't lived it will say, why didn't you just leave? How could you let them do that to you? And there's so many factors going on that becomes what's comfortable. So to go back because it's familiar. And when we say, okay, as uncomfortable as that, and I know how to deal with that. It's the unknown I don't know how to deal with. And that's the discomfort that you're talking about, is the uncomfortable of the unknown, or the uncomfortable of allowing your feelings to come through, allowing the memories or the things that might have triggered it to come up. Because when those are allowed to come up and be released, that's when the healing really happens. And that's where you get deep healing.
I just got like goosebumps because I literally just unlocked like a new level of healing for me. So I mentioned earlier that my birthday was last week and I turned 35. Thank you. I turned 35, which is kind of like a, you know, milestone to hit. It's like, I kind of feel like I just hit, I don't know, my midlife crisis a little bit.
Oh, you're not even close.
Yeah. But I did something completely out of my comfort zone, and I went on a solo trip for the very first time ever outside of the country to Mexico. There was a lot of internal feelings before going on this trip that was like, no, I'm going to cancel it. I can't afford it. You know, I have a daughter, all this stuff. I think God knew, because there was a $300 cancellation fee. So he was like, you're going to pay that or you're going to go. So I chose the latter and I went. It was just such a healing experience for me to like stop, to not have distractions of my daughter, my family, work, all of these things that we just consumed with day in and day out, and to just simply be in my feelings, in my solidarity. I sat by the ocean the day before my birthday and I just cried. I just cried and cried and cried, and I journaled and I let out all these feelings from that relationship, from other relationships, from so many things that I've been holding on to. And it was such an emotional release that I needed. It made me fall deeper in love with myself. So I recommend anyone who hasn't, or if you had that thought, like, should should I book the trip? Should I go by myself? Don't wait for anyone else. Book the damn trip because it's going to change your life.
Yeah, I think the power in that too is that you had mentioned earlier, it was about being alone. Sometimes find ourselves in relationships because we don't want to be alone. Because what happens when we're alone?
That was
Our
me.
thoughts happen. Our
Yes.
thoughts come bubbling up, and it's like, okay, I can find something else to do. I can get busy in work, especially high achieving women. We
Yes.
can work, 80 hours a week. No problem.
That's nothing.
Give
Yep.
me another 80, let me do it again. Let me work 7 days a week,
Mhm.
because that can also become a distraction factor. So I love that you took the trip and that you sat by the water, because water is so healing in
So
itself,
healing.
and the rhythm of the waves and everything. And that just kind of allows all of that to flow over you and to say,
Yes.
yes, see, I can do things on my own.
Amen.
Yeah, that's absolutely beautiful.
Thank you.
So when did you realize that it was the time for you to use your voice, and how did using your voice bring back your power?
So it was about 6 months into my healing. In the beginning, when I came back home and I started working with therapists and life coaches, like I completely shut down. I deleted all my social medias, none of my friend group. I isolated. I went into my cocoon, right? And I just really wanted to deal with the pain that I was in. But it was about 6 months after that that I started feeling like I feel like I've done enough healing up until this point that I feel like I want to talk about it. As you guys can see in the background, I'm a very artistic person, and I had painted, it was a huge painting of my story. It was just my story of domestic violence, and I was going to college at the time, and I presented it to my class for my end of the year project. I got an A+ on it. I'm so proud of that. But that was the first time that I publicly told strangers what I had been through. And that was really the catalyst for me, seeing the reaction from my fellow students of me talking about what I went through and seeing it visually. There was people crying at the end of class. My professor, he was so happy. He was like, amazing job. And that was like, for me, I was like, I have something here. I like this feeling and I want to continue it. Also, I work as a virtual assistant for my sister, who has a very successful podcast. And I was learning a lot of the things behind the scenes podcasting for her. And in December of 2021, just a random day, and I was like, you know what? I'm learning so much from her. I know I can do this. And I want to do it with me sharing my story of what I went through. So January 1st, 2022, I released my very first episode. If you guys listen to it, it's a hot mess compared to how it is now. But we all start from somewhere, so that's fine.
Yep.
But that was really the beginning for me to be like, I want to talk about not just that relationship, but other relationships that I was in. I want to bring people on. I have countless people on now who talk about all different types of trauma, but the whole message behind it is turning your pain into your power, or your trauma into your triumph, right? That's why it's called Watch Us Thrive. So that was really the starting point for me to be like, I have a story to tell. I have been able to gain back my power, my voice. I'm no longer in this relationship. I survived what I went through. I'm on my healing journey. I know I'm not the only one going through what I went through. So let me talk about it. And that was, I mean, hey, what is it? 103 episodes later, we're still here.
Still here, it's still going, and
Yes.
growing as well. And
Yes.
that's all through the power of using your voice.
Yes.
Allowing others to connect with you, because when we share our voices, then anyone can connect with us and they don't feel quite as alone, because we can recognize ourselves in each other.
I want to show you this shirt that I'm wearing. You guys can't really see it, but it says silence hides violence. Yes. So I really just want to let people know that, like, there is power in your voice. There is power in being able to talk about what you went through. That's really how I've been able to get to where I am now, by just speaking up and being vulnerable and honest about what I went through and letting go of that shame.
Yeah, those moments of vulnerability, those can be some of the most uncomfortable, because we don't know how it's going to be received when we reveal, the deepest parts of us.
Yep.
And do it in a way, and the shame goes away. It's amazing. The shame, for me, I felt it really start to go away when I spoke more about it. When you put the words to it and you hear it come out of your mouth, it comes out in the writing, also comes out when you speak it. Takes the power out of it. Like science has shown 50% of the power of it disappears when you speak the words. Even if it's just to yourself in the shower with the music blasting, so no one else can hear you. You start there, and then you find that you end up finding your voice more and more. The more you speak about it, the more you're able to discover your voice and who you are. We get to rediscover ourselves. It's such a wonderful thing to see you doing this and putting this work out there.
Thank you. You too.
Yeah,
I'm proud of
yeah.
you. I'm proud of us.
Yes. So one of the things you share on your blog is that something about healthy conflict and verbal abuse. So where is the line between healthy conflict and having a disagreement, and when does it turn into verbal abuse?
I think for me, thinking back to the last relationship that I was in, it didn't start off that way, which tends to happen a lot in these types of relationships. He spoke to me so gently. He spoke to me like I was his queen. I love you so much, all these things. But he could only pretend to be that person for so long. And when he started calling me out of my name or raising his voice or cursing at me, like not being able to have a disagreement without you disrespecting me, that's when the line gets crossed. So I think it's definitely normal for us, especially when you're in a relationship, to have some sort of conflict, but it's in the demeanor and how they're able to communicate their feelings in a healthy way. Is he ignoring you? Is he, let's sit down and talk about this? Are you guys going to bed angry? Or she too? Is he just flying off the wall and screaming at you and calling you all these names and disrespecting you and ignoring you and blocking you and all of these things? Those are all of those things that I used to experience in a lot of my relationships. I never had someone who could communicate healthily with me, but I think it's definitely important for you to be able to realize if they're cursing at you, if they're calling you a whore, a bitch, a slut, any of these things, like that's not healthy. That's not something that you should feel like you deserved. And that's something that I dealt with a lot in my relationship. So it's normal to have some sort of disagreement, but how they approach you with trying to come to a resolution, that's how you can differentiate between the two.
Yeah, and I think the part where it really becomes, if you feel like you're being demeaned, if you feel like you're being disrespected, that's your body and your emotions saying, hey, pay attention here. Is this really how you deserve to be treated? And if we get used to it, that becomes the norm. And we don't want that to become the norm.
Exactly.
Especially once we've left one relationship. There's many times where we'll go back to the same person, or we'll find that same person in another version and keep going back there. Is when we get to say, oh, this is where the line is crossed, and set some of those boundaries.
It's important for you to set those boundaries, but also follow through with them. I think that's something that I've been able to learn now. I'm not dating because I'm not really ready yet, but when I do decide to start dating, if and when that type of situation happens where I don't like the way that he's speaking to me, the first time is going to be your last time, as opposed to the old Lianne that would, over and over and over and over. And that was the norm for me, not really knowing what it was to have value and worth in me. Now I've been able to differentiate, like, that's the only time they're going to be able to do that. And that's the last time that you'll ever be able to do that to me, period.
Yeah. And when they do that, you get to have that conversation like, hey, this is not acceptable. You get to see in that moment too how they react to you bringing that up. It's like another indicator, because sometimes it can feel uncomfortable to have that conversation.
Absolutely.
So we get to say, okay, I'm going to do this because I know it's healthy for me to set and reaffirm that boundary, because otherwise they'll just keep pushing the boundaries. They'll just keep pushing them. And then all of a sudden you'll turn around and you're like, there's nothing left.
Absolutely.
What happened here?
And that's how you build trust within yourself, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
honoring your word and following through with it. That's what I've realized for me in my own situation. I'm going to stand my ground on how I feel, on my boundary, on whatever it is, and I'm going to follow through with that. And that's going to allow Lianne to trust herself and be like, oh, okay, she got herself. Like she knows who she is now, this time.
Yeah. And when you trust yourself, then it becomes easier to trust the others and to be with people. You start to attract people that are trustworthy because you trust yourself. So much of this, it can sound like it's so overwhelming, but it's not. It's a journey to get to these places.
Yes.
And that's what I want everyone who is watching to know, that this didn't just happen.
No. Absolutely not.
It took me years after I discovered. I was in my early 20s and I didn't feel like I was on my way until I was in my mid 30s. Don't feel like, oh, I have to compare where she is to where I am.
Mm-mm.
You start where you are, you start with what you feel you can complete, and you work through that. And bit by bit, you move forward. And it's not a straight linear line. Like I grew up sailing, where if anyone knows about sailing, you will never go straight. You are always tacking and driving back and forth. Sometimes you're going out for a long reach, and sometimes you're coming back shorter, but you're always back and forth to eventually reach where you want to go. And it's the fun of the sailing of getting there, which is like our healing journey. There's a lot of twists and turns and things, but we always come back to work our way closer and closer to where we want to be.
That's why it's so important to have those tools in your toolkit.
Mhm.
So when those moments do come up that I have experienced, because I was diagnosed with PTSD, when they do come up, you're able to ground yourself a little bit quicker as opposed to before.
Absolutely. So I know, Lianne, that gratitude has also played a part in your healing journey. Share with us a little bit more about gratitude and how it leads to a feeling of fulfillment.
I'm just grateful to have my life because it was almost taken from me. I'm grateful that God gave me the opportunity to really learn from this experience as opposed to repeat the cycle over and over like I used to. And I'm just grateful for the opportunity to help others with what I've gone through. That for me has been so fulfilling. It fills my cup up every time I'm able to sit down and have these type of conversations with someone new. I remember I was asked on a podcast episode, do you ever feel triggered by talking about this over and over? My immediate answer was no. I love being able to talk about it, even though as painful as it was in that moment and after it, like we said before, it has not been rainbows and butterflies. But just being able to learn who I am now, despite of what I've been through, that I'm so grateful for. And for the fact that I'm able to help other people eventually get to that point with wherever you are in your journey, just for me to be a testament to be like, I can get to that point too. However long it takes for you to get there. But look at her. She's thriving despite the shit that she's gone through. It's been life-changing.
Yeah, it absolutely is. Like, I can totally understand that because gratitude was a big part of my process as well. And it still is to this day. Every single night before I fall asleep, I start to write down in my gratitude journal things I'm grateful for. And it could be big things, small things, things from the future that are coming to me, things that have happened in the past, things that might appear negative. The gratitude shows me the lesson in those moments, and I get to discover about myself. Some people from the outside might say, how could you be grateful that that happened to you? And I'm like, because I got to learn so much about myself, and I discovered resilience and strength that I don't think I ever would have discovered any other way. When you're listening and you're watching us have a conversation about how could you be grateful for that, there is a way. You just start small, and you don't have to start with that. You start with small things, and you allow yourself to build the practice of being grateful.
There's something that I saw from Jay Shetty. He talks about a gratitude jar. What I've been doing this year, and I did this last year as well, anytime I have something that I'm grateful for, however big or small it is, I write it down on a Post-it and I put it in this jar. And then at the end of the year, I'm going to dump everything out and I'm going to read it. So that way I'm able to like remember the things, because, you know, we're just doing and doing and doing day in and day out. It's kind of hard for us to remember every single thing that comes up. So I recommend anyone who's watching or listening, start some sort of practice. Like you said, you have a gratitude journal. I have one as well. Just write down little things. Like, honestly, one of the biggest things that a lot of us take for granted is like waking up to see another day. Like, I'm so grateful to God every single day that I'm able to wake up and breathe. I can breathe on my own. I can walk on my own. I get home safely from when I leave my house. It doesn't have to be this grandiose, like, oh, I bought a house or I got married or I had a kid. Yes, I love that for you. That's great. Congratulations. I'm cheering you on. But it's also these little minute things that we tend to overlook. Like, just be grateful for that. Be grateful for this conversation that you're listening to right now. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, there's so much to be grateful for. And it's like when you start with the small things, then it builds and it builds and it builds. So that when you get the big things, it's like, yes.
Exactly.
Because if you show like gratitude as a consistency in who you are, it's amazing how your energy shifts.
And it changes who you attract in your life.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I love that you showed the gratitude jar too, because I was just thinking too, like put all this stuff in, like write it on the post-it, put it in there. And then when you're having a moment that might be more challenging, you can pull one out and say, oh, I remember that. Yeah. And I'm still grateful for that. Okay.
Yes.
And it shifts you like that. Then you can put it
Absolutely.
back in the jar, keep going, and
Yes.
it shifts your energy in that moment because you're tapping
Absolutely.
into a higher level of energy.
I'm going to add this conversation to my jar when we hang up.
Lianne, I know that you've got a gift for everybody. It is the Thrive Guide, a 10-step framework on how to unlock your inner magic after trauma. Share with us a little bit more about the Thrive Guide.
So it's my 10-step framework on what I've personally done to be able to continue healing. I don't want to say healed. This is a never-ending journey.
Yep.
But these are just steps that I've been able to take that have helped me reach to the point that I'm able to thrive out here and help people and build a community to know that despite what I've gone through, despite what you've gone through, you can unlock your inner magic. You can thrive despite the trauma that you've gone through. So it's a free guide. You guys can check it out. You will be subscribed to my email list when you do sign up. I'm not going to spam you guys. Okay. I only talk to you when I have to because I am a solopreneur. So I'm doing everything by myself. But yeah, I definitely recommend you guys checking it out. Send it to someone who you feel could benefit. There's a lot of free information in there that can really help you on your journey to healing.
So absolutely reach out to Lianne, connect with her, get a copy of the Thrive Guide and open it up and see what's in there because like she says, it's your inner magic. You unlock your inner magic after trauma.
Yes.
So this is an opportunity to tap into that and learn, some tips and tricks from someone who is in the process and may just be a little bit further down the road than you. So definitely reach out and connect with Lianne. So Lianne, the name of the interview series is Survivor to Thriver. What does it mean to you to live out your thriving life?
Oh my God, I love that question. I ask every person on my podcast to tell me their definition of thriving. I swear, it's towards the end of every conversation. So now for me to be able to answer that question, I love that. I feel like right now I'm in my season of thriving. My life is not perfect. There's still a lot of things that I'm still working through, but I feel this sense of peace in my life that I have not been able to feel for decades. And I think being able to really come home to Lianne, to really love on Lianne, to really honor her and do things that light me up, like having conversations like this, that is my definition of thriving. And I feel like anyone has the possibility to make that happen despite going through the things that you went through. It's been a roller coaster ride of emotions. Some days are great, other days are not so great. But at the end of the day, this sense of peace that I have over myself, that I've been able to give myself, I mean, you can't tell me shit, okay? And I want everyone to feel that. Yes. I have a hat right over there that says, protect your peace by all means. I hold on to that. That is one of the top things for me now. Like, I just want to feel safe at peace, whether I'm by myself or whether I have someone in my life. And I want anyone to know out there that you can have this feeling too. It's going to take a lot of work. There's going to be good days and not so good days, but you have the ability to make your life the way that you want it to. You just have to speak up and ask for help and take it not even one day at a time, literally like 1 millisecond at a time. You're going to be able to reach where you want to, but it's going to happen on your time when you're ready.
Absolutely. And I love that for you, thriving is that sense of inner peace. It's something that when I was through it too, it didn't even seem possible. It was like so unfathomable to me.
Yeah.
It was like, that'll never happen. And through the work, I now have a sense of peace that when I wake up in the morning, it's like I get to enjoy the day. And I love that you also say that it's about feeling safe. When we feel like we're thriving, we feel like we're safe. We're safe to speak up. We're safe to be ourselves. We're safe to be vulnerable. We're safe to go out into the world and let them experience us as we are. So thank you so much for sharing that, because it's like thriving, like you said, everyone has a different definition. And to have your own definition that you feel connected to. That's what this is about. Not for us to tell you what it means to thrive. It's for you to say, this is what it means to me.
Amen.
So discover it for yourself. And that's what this whole summit is all about. All these amazing women coming on are sharing. I ask this question toward the end of every conversation: what does it mean to you to live out your thriving life? And everybody has a different response. And what matters is that that has meaning for them. Find your own way, your own definition of thriving, and let that be what motivates you and brings you forward. So, Lianne, one last question. What is the one takeaway you would like the woman who is watching to walk away from this conversation with?
I want to say to anyone who may be in this situation right now, you're in an abusive relationship or you just got out and you don't know what to do next, you need to speak up. You need to use your voice. You need to ask for help. That's really what changed my life when I was no longer afraid to talk about the pain that I was going through. I was no longer afraid to be vulnerable, to be transparent, and know that there is help out there. I will volunteer myself to anyone who's listening or watching. If you enjoyed my vibe and you're like, I want to talk to you more, I want to be able to release how I'm feeling, for someone who's been there, who knows exactly how you feel, because I've been in your position, please know that there is help out there. All you have to do is just tell one person that you trust. And I've been able to create so many beautiful connections with women that I've never met in person, met online, who have had my back since I started. And it's just because I decided to speak up. You do not have to suffer alone. That's something that I would tell Lianne back in 2020. You don't need to continue dealing with this. You deserve a healthy relationship. You deserve healthy love. You deserve to feel safe. You don't need to deal with this bullshit that this man is doing to you. So I want anyone who's listening or watching to know that you deserve so much more, and just speak up and let someone know what's going on, because that can literally change your life or it can save your life.
Yes, just speaking up and sharing and asking for help, and sometimes just having someone to talk to who is
just
there
listens.
to listen to you without judgment can make the biggest difference. Who isn't going to say to you, well, when are you going to leave? You've said this so many times before. Are you going to leave this time? No, this is not about that. This is about, you need someone to share what's going on, who is there to listen to you and give you the support that you need, because we all need something different. Like Lianne mentioned, you like her vibe, you connect with her, reach out to her, connect with her, download the Thrive Guide, and you'll be connected with her, and continue to stay connected with her, because she's here to support you. We're all here to support you. And we're building this community because we've lived it. We are in our process of our healing journey, so we can all help each other continue, so that we can all live out our thriving life. So Lianne, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
I'm so grateful that you and I got to have this conversation. Thank you for sharing your story and for putting out your podcast and continuing to speak up and share your voice and show what it is like for you to step into your power. Because I think that has a massive positive impact and is inspiring to other women to say, maybe I can just get a little bit closer to that than I am today.
Yes, you can, damn it.
Yes. So thank you so much, Lianne. I really loved having you on. Thank you, everybody. We'll talk soon.